Welcome back to another Fabric Tip Friday here at Airtech. I was doing a set of wings and I just wanted to kind of cover something. On wings such as these, it's got large wood areas. As you know, our glue is the same glue that we put down the fabric like around a longeron or structural area at a thicker rate, a 1-part glue, 2 parts glue thinner, and then putting tapes down and everything is a 1-part glue, 3-part thinner. So this would be considered structure. If you're putting the fabric on, you know, I like to put glue everywhere. I get a lot of calls that has trouble. They'll come back and they say, when I sprayed the primer, it did something weird. It had some pinholes and soaked through. You always glue the fabric down to a leading edge, like a metal leading edge on a cub wing or whatever. You can get away with felt or some different methods, but the other processes such as polyfiber, you're brushing a poly brush, you're having to brush coats of things over the whole fabric. Where Airtech, you're putting raw primer into the raw fabric in these open areas, and here you want it glued down and backfilled with glue so that when you put the primer on, it will not pinhole. What I'm wanting to cover today is normally you would be brushing on your points like here where there's going to be some glue, and this has already got 1 coat of glue on it and it's dry. I can take a fabric and lay on this and glue it around the backside. I've got videos how we do wings, but let's just say I'm going to go around the backside for 1 inch all the way around and do that, and then lightly shrink everything so the fabric's down here close to it. And then just activate it through with some real thin glue or just glue reducer, and then put a couple coats of thin. What we run into a lot of times when you're brushing on the thick glue, as you're brushing it on, now this is not the thickest, but thick glue, you will, as you keep going and as you keep tipping it, and you see those little lines, and as you keep doing it, at some point it's going to start getting dry and there's going to be those little lines. The fabric will pretty well bed down in that, but sometimes it will, when you wet the fabric through, there'll be little tiny, you know, ridges or something. I don't recommend this for the first time guy, but I usually take like any kind of the wood, run a 320 over it, DA or something like that, just to kind of rough it up so it has some bite to it. You can use an epoxy varnish, make sure it's an approved one that will not interfere with our glue. But the raw glue itself will work in the wood too as far as sealing it. But what I've done is mixed up basically the thick version with maybe just another 1/2 part of thin, and use one of these foam brushes, and they will slowly disintegrate a little bit. They'll swell up. But this is not really for the beginner, but you can cover the area so much better. You can see that kind of a textured look there. You'd want to be to where you're overlapping, and then you see that little line right there. You're going to want to come back and get that little line gone while it's wet, and just kind of keep crossing. Now you see that little stringing out, that little weird thing floating in the air. I guess the camera didn't catch it. It's starting to dry a little bit when it's doing that pulling away. That means you need to get more glue. So if you're rolling it on, that covers the area good. Now this is on hard surfaces. I'm not going to get into double cover because it acts different on the raw fabric. We usually do this way, putting the bed down for that too. But it's these lines you got to be careful with. So I usually overlap them as I go and come back. Some people will take a brush, like a 4-inch brush, and just tip it, but you can start to get lines in it with a brush. So this is one way of using a roller. You can go around a leading edge of a cub. You could use a roller and stuff. It's just that line that you've got to be very careful about. The camera's not picking it up. These little lines right here could be a ridge of glue that when you put the fabric down and wet it through it, that little ridge of glue will be just enough up. Then when you prime a couple coats of primer and do your first sanding, you've got a ridge that's trying to sand. So you're very, very careful of any ridges in your glue. The wetting it through with the thinner or a thin glue, a lot of times you can take a folded over rag and it will rub it into it. Just always make sure that when you put the fabric down, you've stretched it around it and everything, and then you're wetting it through. Just because it's turns gray and you think, boy, it's really bedded into the glue. Once it dries, you need to go with more thin glue on the top to bring that weave on up to the surface so you don't have pinholes when you spray your primer. Think of it like a tape. You know, you're putting a tape down to this, you put 2 more coats of thin glue on the top. If you don't, then you really, all you did was glue the bottom side of the fabric, because all of the reducer evaporates out the top. So it's just one little way of putting glue on that you got large areas that will work. Thank you.